Hi, I'm Larry Bauer, Chief Executive Officer of the Family Medicine Education Consortium, and I want to welcome you to the very first Zoom webinar that is being recorded, that is being launched or managed by the FMEC. We're really excited that Dr. Middleton is going to be presenting in our first recorded Zoom webinar. So Dr. Middleton is a family physician. She is also Medical Director of Faculty Development at Ohio Health, and she's a past FMEC board member. And Dr. Middleton, thanks for joining with us, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Larry. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be with all of you this morning, and I am really hoping that we can share some ideas with each other and learn from each other during this time together.
Could you remind people about the chat room?
Yes, sir. So there is opportunity on Zoom. If you look either at the bottom or the top of your screen, you'll see something that says chat. Because of the number of participants that we're expecting this morning, we're going to ask that if you have questions during the presentation, I totally welcome those, but use the chat feature, and I'll be keeping an eye on that. And when opportunity strikes, we'll kind of take a break and make sure that we respond to all of your questions. But it's important to me that we have time to share all of our ideas with each other each morning. I put this curriculum together on pretty short notice in response to some definite need across our health system here in Central Ohio. And I'm really eager to hear other ideas and share what we can with each other today. So I'm going to make sure my chat feature is turned on, and I'm going to flip over to share my screen. And I'm using SlideDog for this presentation today. So it will take just a moment for that to warm up. While that is warming up, if you haven't played with SlideDog before, it is a really neat way to integrate several different types of media into a presentation, and I'm very happy to talk offline about that and some other neat, cool presentation and software that's out there. This should be just about ready to go. Thanks for your patience. All right. So what we're going to share with you this morning is a telehealth curriculum for residencies. And as Larry mentioned, I am the Director of Faculty Development for Ohio Health based in Columbus, Ohio. We are a large health system, over 30 plus residency and fellowship programs within our community-based health system. I'm also an Associate Program Director for the Riverside Family Medicine Residency Program. So I'm still also engaged in residency quite a bit. Super huge shout out to Larry, to Denise, to Lisa, to everybody at the FMEC for this opportunity. What I love about this organization is less than a week ago, I had a conversation with Larry on the phone where I called and said, Larry, I just put together this whole telehealth curriculum. I bet other people are doing this. How can we spread the word and learn from each other? And boom, here we are. So I really appreciate that nimbleness. Thank you. So here's my proposed agenda for the time we're going to spend together this morning. I would love to hear and see from all of you kind of why you're here. You opted to take some time out of what I know are really busy schedules for a lot of us. So let's use the chat feature and share what your goals are for being here this morning. Then I'll share with you what we put together in terms of our curricular objectives and curricular components with all of you. I'll talk about some of the things. This was not a one-woman show by any means, so who do you kind of need to look for on your team to build this? And then lots of time for feedback, questions, and sharing of other ideas. So what brought you here this morning? And I am actually going to stop screen sharing just for a minute and make sure that I can pull up the chat. There we go. Yeah, I'm not sure in SlideDog I can actually see the chat right now, so I'm going to stop screen sharing just for a minute. All right, and now I'm starting to see some of the chats coming in. So one person who is saying we need to begin to envision aspects of telehealth that should be ongoing in our curriculum after COVID. Yes, this is something, honestly, that we probably should have been doing at Ohio Health and in many other places well before the pandemic, but now definitely it's been pressed into the limelight. Any other goals or specific things that anyone is hoping to get out of our time together this morning? Feel free to share in the chat. Best practices about supervision of residents and billing. Oh my goodness, that is the most robust part of this curriculum, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And I had to get a crash course and some help from our billing experts in terms of how to do that remotely. All right, well, we'll leave the chat open if there are any other ideas that folks would like to share right now, but it sounds like we're all kind of on the same page. So I'm going to go back here to screen sharing. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So here are the curricular objectives, and I'm going to move my video view over, and you might need to just hand zoom to be able to see them. So kind of broken into four main areas. The first was just thinking about who are the appropriate patients for telehealth visits, learning how to proactively respond to potential barriers in delivering patient care with telehealth, some tips for our residents in terms of how to communicate effectively with patients regarding their plan of care. Communication is different when it's delivered by video or by telephone, and we've been using both with our residency programs. You lose some of the opportunities to have nonverbal support your message, even with video. Facial expressions, etc., are just not as easy to pick up. So we do include some things in this curriculum in terms of ensuring that communication is still staying strong during this time. And then last but not least, how do you bill? How do you do this accurately? How do you precept the billing? So there are four pieces of this curriculum that I'll be sharing with you. The first was kind of an overview document along with some TLDRs, or too long, didn't read, so some very brief snapshot summaries of the content for each of our four objectives. And each of the pieces of this curriculum you'll see was built with the Generation Z learner in mind. So Generation Z is the generation that is currently in medical school and entering residency right now. So this is intended to be very interactive. Then we have built a series of brief webinars. None of them are longer than 18 minutes for our residents to view, for our faculty to use as part of this curriculum. So this curriculum was rolled out across Ohio Health, made available to all of our residency programs. Then included in the overview document are links to some online resources that residents and faculty can take a look at and have discussion around independently. And last but not least, we did a fifth webinar video specifically on how to teach telehealth, along with a faculty guide to how to implement the curriculum, discussion questions, etc. So I'm going to show you each of those pieces right now. So this is the overview document that was created, as you can see, just a couple of weeks ago, very quickly, and was made available to all of our programs across Ohio Health. So I usually try to be pretty transparent in terms of what my curricular goals are, and you'll see the four curricular objectives listed here, the components that we just talked about. And then here's an example of one of those TLDR short summaries. So this is the link to the webinar that I created with our AV team. You can see it's very brief in terms of appropriate patient issues. And then there's just a really quick summary here of the key points involved with that. And here's the second objective. This is CareConnect is our EMR system here. So there's some tip sheets that I included hyperlinks to in the curriculum for faculty and residents to be able to link to easily. So hopefully everything is in one place to help them get started with offering telehealth, in addition to a second webinar around that second objective. And then again, here's our summary. So you can see this kind of repeats for each of the 4 objectives. And I'm happy to share these documents with anyone who is interested. Just shoot me an email, which will be on the last slide. So here's some video series that I was able to create with the assistance of our AV department at Ohio Health. And what I would like to do, if permitting, is just show you a really, really brief clip. Yep, there I am.
There's the first of this role to go by the website right here. Previously, to deliver telehealth care and bill for it, application has already been established with your office and a live staff conversation. Right? So you can't see and evaluate the patient in your practice telehealth right now, whether that was sick or not, as it is pandemic, as anybody's guess. One of the things that has not changed, patient telehealth visits must be patient initiated. Office staff, not all of, and broadly solicit and advertise telehealth visits as first patients to sign up. Just like an in-office appointment, patients must be the ones driving the desire to have the visit done. This next one is just a bit more complicated, so bear with me. Because basically, you can't double dip. You can't see a patient in person for a live office visit, and then in the next 7 days, you can for a telehealth encounter related to the exact same thing and bill again. Or vice versa, you can't see somebody for a telehealth encounter, and then within the next 4 hours, even in your office, you can bill again for the exact same thing.
So we're really fortunate to have a great AV department that was able to kind of build these series for us. This is available on YouTube, and I'm happy to make those links available to anyone. There is some content in all of them which is specific to our health system and to our EMR and to the state of Ohio, but most of this, I think you'll see, for example, this slide that we were just talking about is pertinent everywhere. And then here is the faculty guide. So included a lot of discussion, questions, and ideas for integrating this curriculum. Ideally, as I'm sure all of you know, the best learning occurs when it is active learning and not passive learning. So not residents just sitting back, viewing videos and reading stuff, but actually getting the chance to actively engage with the content around having discussions, potentially building QI projects around some of the implementation of telehealth. We encourage them to create SMART goals around their learning interests, especially for senior residents who are thinking about what this is going to look like in practice for them in the future. There are some links here in terms of how to do some of these activities remotely using a bunch of different technologies, Zoom like we are today. We use a lot of WebEx internally at Ohio Health, Slack, Twitter, email, lots of ways out there to facilitate an interactive discussion, even though many of us are sheltering in place right now. So, and then here's the video overview of the curriculum again. And then on the second page of this is a billing guide for faculty to have available as a ready reference. So these are internal dot phrases, for those of you familiar with Epic, that include all of the billing elements that are required for us. But then we also have summaries of the time and billing code recommendations. So who do you need on your team? Who did I need to be able to put this together and to be successful with doing it? Well, ideally you need somebody who knows a little bit about curricular design. That was me. Because every place is a little bit different and has unique circumstances. This curriculum that I built is designed to be really broad and appropriate across multiple specialties. Maybe you're building something that's much more specific. Maybe your state has different guidelines. So it's important to take all of those in. I don't think one size fits all, and make sure you're adapting what it is that you're using to your local needs. I am indebted to the assistance of one of my colleagues in family medicine who is also a billing and coding expert as well as an IT expert, for making sure that all of the billing advice that I was providing in the videos for the residents and for the faculty was accurate and timely and consistent with our internal expectations. AV team, can't say enough about our AV team. I think there are ways to build webinar content that is high quality without an AV team. You can record things on Zoom, just like we're doing right now. So there are other ways to do it. But if your health system or university has an AV team, chances are they're already up and running, just like ours has been, to facilitate communication across the health system. And our guys were more than happy to have me jump in, record these, and put their expertise to work to make them really high quality. So don't ask, don't get. You might be surprised if you ask. And last but not least, I think it is really important to have the buy-in of your academic leadership, whether that's a department chair, a director of medical education for a hospital, for the program directors that you're working with. What are the needs that they are seeing? What are the things that they would like to make sure that the telehealth curriculum responds to? So I'm actually going to stop sharing here just for a minute and make sure that the chat box is wide open. That was intended just to be a brief overview. I'm happy to go over things in more detail if that is of use. But what ideas, what feedback, what questions does anyone have? Please feel free to use the chat feature on Zoom and we'll kind of open it up.
So, Dr. Middleton, let me make a suggestion. Given that not all of the people who signed up showed up, I think we have a smaller group, and it may be easier to unmute everyone and allow. Sure. So, Denise,
I'm totally okay with that.
There we go.
Hello.
Good morning.
So we're getting people unmuted here. So there's an opportunity for group discussion or directly asking questions so that you don't have to type them in through the chat box.
Which is definitely easier if you don't have to do it.
Yeah. So give everybody another moment. If you have any questions, now is the time. Otherwise, I'll ask Dr. Middleton to resume her presentation.
Sure thing.
Dr. Middleton, I think you're free to resume.
All righty. You're all making it too easy for me this morning. All right. That is my contact information. And let me make sure I make that go away so you can see it. So feel free to shoot me an email if you are interested in any of these materials. I'm glad to share. I would love to hear about what you are doing where you are, or other curricula that you are aware of. I have done a lot of curricular design over the years, but I make no pretense of being a telehealth delivery expert. And I think the way that all of us ensure that we're doing best practices in teaching is making sure that we're sharing with each other what we're doing. So I am ready and eager to learn more about what everyone is doing in other places. And at the same time, glad to share what we are doing to hopefully maybe be a little bit of benefit for everybody else.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth.
Hi.
I'm a program director in Virginia, and I think a few of our faculty are signed in today too. I think as you're talking, one of the things that would be most helpful for us to hear or talk about is how folks are engaging residents and faculty in doing quality telehealth visits and teaching that while being socially distanced and doing our current conferences via Zoom and flooding everybody with emails and pictures of work processes when we cannot have a volume of people in the office doing all this side by side. I think that's been the biggest challenge right now of actively engaging anybody in ways to do this well. Thanks.
No, I completely agree with you, and that's a great question and a great point, and it's been a challenge for us as well. What we use Zoom actually is compatible with our electronic health record. So we are actually doing our telehealth precepting from home right now. In Central Ohio, we've kind of been waiting for the surge for a few weeks. Ohio has done a reasonably good job of flattening the curve. And we have been keeping half of our residents and faculty at home on a rotating every 2-week basis to make sure that we always have some healthy workforce available. And in case folks are starting to get sick, we haven't seen a super high volume of COVID-19 yet, but we feel like it's probably coming. So we have a lot of folks who are at home, and our telehealth visits that we're doing right now with patients within our program have all been with folks at home and not with sitting side by side, or 6 feet away from the preceptor. So we are using Zoom, and Zoom does have the capability within our EHR to do a 3-way call. So depending on how the morning schedule looks, we have 1 or 2 preceptors assigned from home to a handful of telehealth residents who are virtually seeing patients. And then they kind of send us a text when they are, or a group chat. We use something called Jabber on our system to let us know that they have a patient that they are ready to precept after they've initiated the conversation with them. And then if they have something they want to talk about with us one-on-one, they kind of put the patient on hold and just talk to us for a little bit. If they're feeling pretty comfortable with what they're doing, we just jump on and they precept with us with the patient listening, which is something that we do in our office, not infrequently anyway. So that is kind of what our workflow has looked like for doing telehealth. There is a lot of discussion. I was in an 1.5-hour faculty meeting yesterday debating what does this look like after the pandemic is done. So how do we integrate telehealth into our day-to-day workflow in a way that makes sense? Because it is beneficial for a lot of patients, and it's a skill we want to make sure that our residents have. Well, I don't have any definite answers on what this is going to look like for us yet. But I can tell you for all of our telehealth care right now, all of our precepting is happening remotely. In terms of communicating processes, we as a residency program currently are using Slack to communicate that with each other. Our residents are more likely to engage with that than to check their email 3 times a day, and Slack kind of sends them a ping or a notification, and it's easy to kind of search through. There's some talk about us potentially transitioning to a different product for that called Microsoft Teams, which is better supported by our health system as a, yeah, you're nodding. So a lot of folks know Teams, transitioning to that with the next academic year. That's also an ongoing discussion right now. But I agree, email is not the ideal way to be transmitting information that folks need to be seeing on a regular basis. The last point I'll make is that we are doing twice-a-day huddles that are virtual as well with the folks who are physically in the office, and teleconferencing with the folks who are at home at the beginning of the morning office session, at the beginning of the afternoon office session, just to review workflows, make sure everybody knows who's doing what, and to share any other new information. So there's some redundancy of how we're kind of pushing out workflow changes, but it's definitely a work in process, and the communication is very challenging.
So Dr. Middleton, I have a question for you. And my question is, have you heard anything from the RRC in terms of how these telehealth visits are counted for the residents as they have to accrue, a certain number of patient contacts?
So I'm going to defer to the program directors who might be more up to speed on that than me as a non-program director. I will say that I know that the number required for our current PGY3s to have prior to graduation has been waived, to the best of my knowledge. So our current PGY3s, they're not strictly enforcing the visit number requirement to sit for your boards and be board certified and to graduate. So that is the case. I defer to others. I have not heard directly whether the RRC is going to start permitting to count these visits. My suspicion is that they will, especially because they're happening within the continuity setting, but I have not heard definitively that. I'll defer to other folks on the call if other folks have heard that.
Hi, Jen. This is Jonathan Stewart.
Hi.
Thanks so much for your time. I'm with Curlian, with Mary Beth and several other people on the call. And what we're doing right now, we're using mostly phone telehealth with a little bit of a platform called VidYO. That's the only one that's been vetted by our system. So we're not allowed to use Zoom or Doximity or anything like that right now, which is a bit frustrating for me. But we're told that's the only thing we can do. The VidYO is very clunky. It's hard to get people to actually download an app on their phones. Many of our patients don't have working phones or laptops or whatnot. Hence, we're doing a lot of our visits via telehealth. So I guess my question is a couple things. How are we on just a logistics side supposed to be billing for those things when I'm not on that phone call? And if we do have a video platform, how are you billing? Because it sounds like you're billing based off of, according to your chart, based off physician time, but there's not a lot of physician time involved with those video visits from what I'm understanding from your presentation and handout. So if you could just talk through some of those logistics, that would be great.
So I'll do video first. So for video, even though the chart has all the time on it on the top of that, which I probably didn't spend enough time on, which I'm actually gonna end this. And sorry, it'll take just a second for it to unload here. Let me open it back up for you again. So most of the time, the video visits, we're actually billing on medical decision-making and not on time, which you can do in primary care. I'm just gonna hop on over here. Thanks for bearing with me. So most of the time, we're actually billing them on medical decision-making. So it's kind of the same as the 95-97 guidelines. You need to have one history element and one exam finding, and the exam finding is going to be things you can visibly see with your eyes, obviously. But the level of medical decision-making is actually what drives the billing and coding for a video visit. Now, that's not true for telephone at all, but for video. So you can bill by time for a video visit. We're not doing that a lot, to be honest, but it's an option. But this is what we're actually doing most in our office right now, is, letting the level of medical decision-making, most of them are 99213s. You can use the primary care exception right now during the pandemic. Whether that's going to continue, I don't know. But at least as of right now, you can use the primary care exception rule, so you don't have to directly see the patient during the telehealth visit. You can precept with the patient real time or immediately after, or whatever it is your systems billing and coding experts has deemed appropriate for indirect supervision, and bill that. For 99214, so for 4, you have to get on the visit somehow and see the patient with your own eyes, whether you're sitting next to the resident or whether you're coming in 3-way. Now, that might not be an opportunity with your software. But you can bill, and again, during the pandemic, you can see a new patient on telehealth, which previously was not the case. So in 02 and 03, a 12 and a 13, you can have a resident bill with indirect supervision using video, as long as the level of medical decision-making is appropriate. And again, the requirements for telehealth are they only have to have one history, which you're always going to have more than that. And the sticky point is the one exam finding. So there's a piece in the curriculum that kind of goes over what kind of examination can you do just on video. And it's the things you would expect, right? Patient is, alert and in no acute distress. We have done a couple of rash visits, and patients hold their rash up to the camera, and then we can document that. Breathing is unlabored, those sort of things. But you just have to have one of those on there. So this is actually how we're doing most of our billing right now. You can still do the coding by time with counseling or coordination of care, just like you could before, but that's only attending time. And you can also do billing and coding by total time, which is pre-service, inter-service, and post-service documentation care. We haven't done that at all, honestly. We've done a couple of these just where there's something super complicated and it's an intern and the attending jumps on and spends a lot of time with the call. But most of what we're doing in terms of the video billing is this. Telephone billing is a whole different animal. Did I answer your question about video before I go any further?
Yes, and in terms of documentation, we actually have a smart phrase that was recommended by the system that includes all the core elements in there.
Brilliant.
For a typical code.
Yeah, our system built that too, so which is nice. Now, telephone is a completely different animal, and we did not have the ability to do video for about the first week or so after Ohio's shelter-in-place order, so that wasn't something our health system had been doing previously. So they hurried up and rolled it out, but we were doing all telephone for about a week or so before that. The trick with telephone, as you alluded to, only attending time is billable. So what we were doing was kind of dividing up our preceptors with the residents, having the resident essentially start the call, but then, once they kind of got all their initial information and they had an idea what their plan was, having the attending jump on the call, do a quick recap with the attending on the call, and then the attending just kind of would hang out and listen and or jump in if needed while they were kind of going through the plan of what they were going to do. And that would usually get us at least to 5 to 10, minutes here, if not the 11 to 20, get past that every now and then, especially with an intern. During the pandemic, you can actually bill this out to Medicaid patients as well, which was not the case before. And this is a little bit better reimbursement than what Medicare was offering for phone follow-up. So we're not billing any of the G2012 Medicare codes right now for phone follow-up because this is a little bit better reimbursement. What that's going to look like after the pandemic, I don't know. But that's unfortunately what we're doing. And we still have some patients who are having difficulty accessing the video. The nice thing about Zoom is you can do it on a smartphone, on a tablet, on a computer. So we've had pretty good uptake, and we have a pretty socioeconomically diverse patient population. We have a pretty good uptake with that, including even being able to do some interpreter visits with the 3-way on Zoom. But on the folks who don't have that technology available, we're still doing telephone visits, and we're just trying to get the attending on at least for 5 minutes if we can. If we can't and it's just busy, then it's just not billable.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Amy Doolin. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hey, I'm with Carillion Clinic as well. And how do you jump on a call when your residents are working remotely?
So we use Doximity to do the Doximity dialer to do all of our telephone calls. And you are able through that app to do a 3-way telephone call, so you can put the patient on hold and then call the attending and have them come in. I suppose if you did not have Doximity, most of the smartphones allow you to do, add a third party in to the call as well. So the resident sets up the visit, we provided some scripting for them around this with the patient. I'm going to start off by talking to you, and then I'm going to take a break and talk to my supervising physician for a minute, and then, Dr. Middleton will be coming on the call with me, and she'll be listening in as we finish up the visit.
Okay, and then did you adjust your templates how do you manage doing that in a timely manner when you're precepting 3 or 4 residents?
So yes, we adjusted a lot. Totally true. So we, again, have kind of divided up our remote team and our live in-office teams right now as a residency program. We're a 666 program. So we usually most mornings we still have our inpatient and pediatric and OB service obligations. So we have the residents who are doing all of that. We usually have 2 or 3 residents in the office per half day, and then the rest of them who are not doing any of those in-person obligations are at home. And the residents who are at home are assigned to telehealth patients. And then since we don't need as many attendings in all those places in the office, we took all of our attendings with a little bit of heartbreak out of direct patient care during this time, also to maintain our flexibility in case we got pulled to help with clinical care should a surge hit us here in Central Ohio. So we don't have any attendings doing direct patient care right now. We are all doing supervision of residents, whether it's in those locales or on these visits. So 1 attending to every 2, maybe 3, 2 is better, residents for the telephone and video visits both has been a ratio that has worked well for us. And yet it is a little more intensive, you know, than normally in the office being able to blitz through pretty well with, you know, 3 or 4.
Okay, and one last question. Are your residents doing video visits remotely, or are you just having them do the video visits for the residents that are in-house?
They're doing it remotely from their own homes.
How do you supervise those?
So the attending is also at home, in their own home, and the residents will initiate again, we use Zoom with our EHR. The resident initiates a visit with the patient, gets their initial history, and then they make a decision about whether they want to talk to us and put the patient on hold when they bring us in. So you can do a 3-way Zoom through our EHR. So they kind of shoot us a text and say, hey, I'm ready for you to jump on. And we click a little button on our EHR and jump on the call. And then the resident either says to the patient, hey, this is Dr. Middleton. I'm going to talk to her for a minute about what we talked about, and we'll be right back. And you can actually put the patient on hold. Or they'll say, hey, Dr. Middleton, you know, patient so-and-so and I are ready to talk to you about what we talked about. And I'll just, you know, and they'll precept with the patient there.
Okay, I see. And then are you doing Q 30-minute visits? I'm our medical director, so I have all these questions. Sorry.
Oh, I should probably connect you to our medical director. We are scheduling our telehealth visits right now on a 20-minute Q 20-minute, but we're not full, if that makes sense. So we allot 20 minutes for each of them, but the patient demand has not been such that we're doing literally 3 an hour. I would say on the half days that I have precepted so far, it's kind of, for most of the residents, I would say most of them are doing maybe 3 or 4 in a half day.
Okay.
Which is definitely not revenue, you know, equivalent to what we were doing before in the office, that's for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Hi, Jen. My name is Manasa. I'm at Forbes Family Medicine in Monroe. Hi.
Tell Amy I said hi.
I will. I just was wondering, what video visits are you guys precepting? We are currently, our 2nd and 3rd years are also doing telemedicine from home, and then they just call us later to precept. But I was wondering, besides like transition of care and level 4s, what other specific video visits are you guys jumping in on?
So we are right now, because our volume has not been super high, we're honestly jumping in on pretty much all of them. Part of that is just us experimenting with the workflows as well. We've had a couple of times where a resident, you know, especially a 3rd year, got pretty much all the way through their visit and just wanted us to jump on and say hi at the end to be able, you know, they thought it was complex enough to be able to bill it for, and the call got disconnected or dropped, and then, you know, they just bill it as a 1-3 with an indirect supervision. But right now, because our volume has not been super high, we've been getting on pretty much all the calls. I could certainly foresee, you know, especially if the primary care exception is going to continue to hold with telehealth, as we kind of start to ramp back up again, potentially over the next few months, not necessarily in person or getting on a Zoom call to connect with the patient during the visit. Yeah, you're exactly right. That's not something that's necessary.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments, or perhaps others want to share something that they're doing that
yes.
others would like to hear about?
Or are you doing Amy Doolin here? Oh, go ahead, Mary Beth. Mary Beth, you go.
Sorry, Amy. My question really is about the Zoom and Doximity. Did you all have any system pushback on that? Because we were told specifically that those have such, that those two platforms, which we initially went immediately to do this stuff with our patients, that those aren't secure enough and that there are potential HIPAA violations, and we got locked out of them. How did you all have those conversations?
So we didn't. That actually, those choices were made for us by the system. So the system, Ohio Health, made the decision to go with Zoom, even being aware of what those risks are. I was not involved in any of those discussions, but we were just informed that that's what we were going to be using. In terms of Doximity, again, you don't have to connect into the EHR with Doximity. I'm only speculating if the reason to go with Zoom is because it interfaces with Epic so nicely. And again, it's an opportunity to recoup a little bit of revenue during this time. Doximity, we have been encouraged to use, but not enforced to use, if that makes sense. It doesn't connect indirectly to the EHR, but the fact that it allows you to call the patient, not using your own number, and with the appearance that it's coming from an Ohio Health number, increases the likelihood the patient is going to pick up. And we've just been encouraged to use that. So, but there was no advocacy required on our part. They thought we were just informed.
Thanks. You know how that goes.
Well, sometimes we get informed about things I'm less happy about. I'm not going to lie.
This is Amy Doolin again. Are you guys doing annual Medicare wellness visits?
We are not doing those yet.
Okay.
Ohio is going to be starting to lighten some of its shelter-in-place requirements over the next couple of weeks. And most of any kind of routine thing, routine visit, with the exception of well-child visit with vaccines, which we have a whole different workflow around, which I'm happy to talk about, we have just kind of pushed off. The rationale behind that, again, I don't want to speak to anybody else's geographic locale. About 3 to 4 weeks ago in Ohio, those of us, especially in Central Ohio, were informed by all the prognosticators that they were expecting a big, bad, ugly surge to hit about a week ago. Fortunately, that did not happen, which is awesome. But because that was the initial thought of what was going to happen, there were a lot of things very quickly kind of shut down and went into, okay, what are we going to do essentially? And everything else we're just going to wait to deal with for a while. So that happened with our Medicare wellness visits. The surge has not hit here. It seems, hopefully, we've successfully flattened the curve and it is not going to hit us as terribly here as it has other places in the country. I can imagine that's something that we'll probably pick up and start doing again relatively soon, and potentially using this platform, because obviously that is a more vulnerable population that we still want to keep at home as much as possible right now. But we have not been, we've been doing very little routine care during the last month. And now we're starting to look at how to ramp some of those processes back up in our office, now that it seems like we're not going to have half of our physicians redeployed other places to help with critically ill patients.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Amy, we at Forbes are starting to do annual wellness visits on telemedicine, but we use Epic, and we have, through Epic, we're able to connect and then also send the flow sheets and the questions ahead through my chart. I don't know if you guys have that capability.
I'm not sure if we do. Jonathan, would you know?
I mean, we have my chart. It depends on if patients actually have it and can use it. We are trying to work on incorporating annual wellness visits. The tricky thing is how's that going to work in terms of what does the nurse do versus what does the provider do with the screening questions that are required with that.
Our nurse practitioner has been calling patients. Are obviously patients 90 and older are not patients we're targeting right now. It's more like less than 80 who tend to have a smartphone. And she's been calling them to try and get them set up to do annual wellness visits. So that's just one of the processes that's we're doing right now.
And does she take them through their basic questionnaires, or just gets them set up and, you know, hey, do you have my chart capabilities, etc.?
I don't know if we've gotten to the point of doing the questionnaires yet. I think she's just trying to make sure they have my chart, the app available, and just kind of get that process going.
Okay.
But I can type my email in the group chat, and you can always message you, and I can find out more and let you know.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Dr. Middleton, any other points you'd like to make?
I'm going to respond to a couple of things in the chat that I'm seeing. So, yep, so I see a lot of folks are using Epic. That's what we are using as well. Cool, and some, yay, connections, people meeting each other. Yep. Good things.
So then I'm going to finish up with a comment. I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but the FMEC was the first follower of the direct primary care movement. And I'm very well connected with docs who are practicing in direct primary care practices across the country. So I've been hearing stories about how they have been weathering the storm, how they've been serving their patients. And the one thing I would say for, I think everyone, at least everyone who's spoken so far, they're in a residency program. And the direct primary care practitioners don't have all the rules and regulations and all of the obstacles to taking good care of their patients. And so I'm hoping that you will encourage your residents to look at direct primary care as a business model when they complete their training, and that your residency program will have a connection with at least one direct primary care practitioner nearby, so the residents can go out, take a look and see what that looks like. I really do think it is the future. The strictures that you folks are having to deal with, that makes it so awkward to take care of your patients during this kind of situation, those simply do not exist in their world. And I am very hopeful that one of the, if there's a silver lining to the pandemic, that there is a movement across the country right now to push hard to get primary care into a prospective payment model, whether it's direct primary care or some other form of prospective payment, so you don't have to jump through all these hoops to take care of your folks and to teach your residents how to take good care of people. So just a comment. And if you want to learn more about that, we are still in the process of planning the Direct Primary Care National Summit. That will be in July, I think it's 19th to 21st. Currently, we're still hoping to have a face-to-face meeting, although that's looking more and more doubtful. But as a virtual meeting, we will have the opportunity for you to learn about direct primary care from some of the old hands, so to speak. So I would encourage you as a program to have somebody tune into that when it becomes available. I really do see it freeing primary care, family medicine to do what you folks are so well trained to do.
Dr. Bauer, it's Mary Beth Sweet again. I have a number of residents who are interested in that model, and thus far as they've explored it have decided they can't do that straight out of residency due to debt and the risk of going into it. So I have more to learn from you about how that's mitigated if you're trying to get fresh grads into this. I'm hoping you'll put your email address in the chat so that we can pick up on that and maybe take this conversation offline.
Absolutely. So I would be happy to, and I'll put that my email address in here in just a moment. I'd be happy to talk to those residents, and if you'd like to arrange for a Zoom, webinar like this, I would be able to bring in some of the direct primary care practitioners. They love to talk to students and residents. And that issue of debt, yes, it's an issue, but it's more fear than it is factual. You can, if you plan things well enough, and the key to a direct primary care practice is low overhead. If you don't make bad decisions setting up your practice and create a lot of unnecessary overhead, you can manage your student loans, and you can start up your practice. And within 6 months, you're going to be not only breaking even, but for the rest of your career, you're going to be free and not trapped in what I call the hamster wheel model of care. So I'd be happy to talk to not make that offer to anyone. I'm happy, and it's not that I'm the expert, but I do know the experts, and they'd love to talk to residents.
Yeah, I would appreciate your email address. That'd be great. And then, Dr. Middleton, one last question for you, if I may. It sounds like you all might have been doing some telehealth prior to the pandemic and may have some ideas about what aspects of this you're going to continue afterwards. Could you kind of just highlight those?
Sure. So we actually were not doing this before the pandemic. So just to clarify that, what it's going to look like after the pandemic has been a topic of much discussion, I'll tell you, especially within the residency. And some of the issues that we have been wrestling with as a faculty have been, where do these appointment slots go? Do we integrate them into our regular office schedule? There is some, I haven't looked at this directly, but informed by other colleagues in practice management literature that suggests that patients are less willing to wait for a telehealth visit than they are for an in-office visit. So for example, if I have a scattering of live and telehealth visits on my office schedule, and at one point I'm running half an hour behind, that patient is not going to be happy to wait 30 minutes for my phone call when they would have been potentially more willing to sit and wait in the office. So our office medical director right now is looking at a couple of different scheduling models, and I suspect it's going to be some trial and error and some QI around what that looks like, where potentially either the first hour or the last hour of the office schedule might be dedicated to telehealth visits. Is that going to be ultimately maximally patient-centered if there are only specific times that patients are able to get on to telehealth? That we don't know the answer to yet, and we'll probably take some of those scheduling suggestions to our patient advisory board and ask them for some input. But what it's going to look like going forward, I don't think we know yet, to be honest. I think there's room for a lot of dialogue around that, but there's a lot of big question marks for us, definitely. Sure.
We're all in the same boat.
Right? Yes. And the waves are a little rocky.
This is Amy Doolin again. When I click on some of the links, it makes me, it's asking for a username and password just for your initial setup guidelines or processes that you have. Are you going to share those with us?
I can. We've got everybody's emails, right, Larry? So I
Yes.
will just directly email out all the files to you.
Thank you.
So I think we're bringing things to closure here. Dr. Middleton, thank you so much. This came together very quickly, and I feel really good about what we're doing here. And I will also say to all the other folks, so the tagline for the FMEC is we bring people and ideas together to get things done. and we respond very rapidly to opportunity, especially in this era that we're in now. So if you have an idea or a need and you want to contact me, you now have my email address. I am happy. And the other thing is, what's amazing to me, normally this time of year, I'm on the road 2 to 3 times a month, flitting all over the place, talking with people, meeting with people. I'm sitting at home here, and I'm more connected right now with people in Virginia, Pennsylvania, in probably other places. So this just creates incredible opportunity for the FMEC. So if you have a need, an issue, or there's something perhaps that you've developed that you want to present to others, we would be happy to respond to the idea.
Sorry, can I ask one quick question? How are
Sure.
you guys dealing with Zoom burnout?
Oh boy.
Well, that's when the happy
Yeah.
hour starts.
Right? Oh my gosh. I can't say that we have a definite answer around that. I will say one of the things I'm working on, taking off my residency hat and putting on my faculty development hat, not that I don't often wear both, but one of the things I'm working on with that second hat right now is looking into alternative ways of delivering live and archived content besides Zoom, because the Zoom fatigue phenomenon is real. And so one of the software suites that I'm looking at right now is called the Smart, all capital letters, Learning Suite, and it interacts with smart boards. So we have one smart board in our residency program, but you don't have to have a smart board to use the online learning suite. It is not cheap, but right now, if you are an educator, and heck, we're all educators, you can use it for free. So we're going to be trialing some of those technologies out in our office, and I am actively on the hunt for others. So if you know of any other good ones, let me know. But yeah, the Zoom fatigue is real. I will totally validate that. And, you know, as I talk about a little bit in the curriculum in terms of face-to-face with patients, but I think it's true for these kinds of settings as well. It's not the same as being live, right? I mean, you miss out on a lot of the nonverbal communication that humans are able to share with each other in a large meeting. So it's just not the same. And yeah, the struggle is real. I totally hear you. So I can tell you for us, as a health system, we're looking into some alternative ways so that not everything all the time is always Zoom. We have a few residencies. This is not Ohio Health sanctioned, but we have a few residencies that are using Slack, not to share anything HIPAA related, but to share ideas, education, other sort of things. And I just wrapped up working on a system project using Microsoft Teams for redeployment, physician redeployment education, should we need that. And I think that's going to be a platform we're going to be using a lot more as well, since Ohio Health is so embedded in the Microsoft system, as a lot of places are right now. So I think the opportunity for us to be really creative, now is the time. It's kind of cool, actually, especially as we have those Gen Zers coming into residency who are not going to put up with 60-minute long grand rounds, blah, blah, blah. You know, they want things that are really interactive. They want the ability to have archived video available. They learn primarily through image. So I hate to say silver lining, because there's so much that is just so beyond terrible with what is happening right now. But I do think it is going to push us in education to really move into the 21st century in terms of optimizing our educational methods. And Zoom by itself is definitely not going to be sufficient. We've got to ramp it up. So I'm actively playing with all that stuff. Who knows? Maybe we'll do a follow-up webinar, Larry, where we talk about all these other cool things that I'm learning about.
John?
Thank you.
This is Eric Chen from Carillion. If for any of you that are on that subscribe to the advisory board emails, there was a good one that came out in the past week about Zoom fatigue. It had some good tips.
Cool.
So,
Eric, could you share that with the group?
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I can forward that to. Yeah, I'll figure out a way to send it to everybody.
So if you've got my email address. If you send it to me, I'll get it out to the group.
Okay, sounds good.
Mary, did you have something else?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. That was a false nonverbal. Okay. So then I think we're done. Dr. Middleton, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone else who joined with.
Thank you, guys.
Stay safe out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the tips.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.